minutes to the December 17th, 2019 Parish Planning and Zoning Board meeting. If you would all please stand while Mr. LaSalle Williams says the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Our gracious Father in heaven, again we come thanking you for allowing us another blessed day. We ask your presence in this meeting tonight, and we pray for this board, we pray for the staff. Not forget and give you the thanks of the season for which you now celebrate, which we call Christmas. And let us be reminded that it's not about us, but it's all about you. And we just thank you for your grace and your mercy. And this we offer as our prayer this night.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Coach. Ms. Christie, would you call roll, please?
Chair Art Little.
Here.
Vice Chair Kirk Smith.
Here.
Ms. Latricia Cobb. Ms. Julia Dickerson.
Here.
Ms. Sharon Galicia.
Here.
Ms. Janelle Hyatt.
Here.
Mr. Kyle Link.
Here.
Mr. Jake Porsche.
Here.
Mr. Gary Barr is absent. Mr. LaSalle Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Christie. This is an 11-member board. It will take the majority of those members present to grant or deny any requests heard here tonight. The chair will refrain from voting unless that vote might affect the outcome. The meeting will be conducted with me reading the requests from the agenda. The planning staff will give a presentation and report their recommendations. If the applicant would like to add to the staff's recommendations or present, or if someone from the audience has comments, please come to the microphone and state your name, address, and the nature of your request. All persons wishing to speak other than the applicant needs to fill out a blue request to appear form located in the back of the room. This form must be given to a staff member prior to the reading of the agenda item. As required by this board's bylaws, in all cases, the proponents will be limited to 10 minutes. The opponents will be granted 10 minutes as well, with each speaker allowed no more than 3 minutes. I recommend that a spokesperson be selected if there's a large group wanting to speak on the same agenda item. If 4 or more speakers or request forms are submitted, the time allotted for individual speakers will be limited based upon the number of forms submitted. The chair has a right to limit speakers who present redundant information or personal attacks. In unique situations, the chair may extend or the board may vote to extend the time allotted for speakers. After this discussion, the board will vote on each item. I will announce the decision of the board after the vote. The variances and exceptions are final tonight. The rezone cases will go before the police jury for final action on December the 19th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. This meeting is being filmed by Calcasieu Parish Government Channel and can be viewed on Wednesday and Thursday following the meeting. For additional run dates, check the website at www.cppj.net. Channel 5 in Lake Charles, Sulphur, Moss Bluff, Westlake, and Vinton, DeQuincy and Gillis, and Channel 99 in Carlos and Grand Lake. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please turn off or silence all electronic devices. Agenda item number 5 is to take appropriate action to approve the minutes of the November 19th, 2019 Planning and Zoning Board meeting. I'll entertain a motion for approval. I have a motion by Mr. Williams and seconded by Ms. Hyatt. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda item number 6. Take appropriate action on VAR 10190110, a request by TKN Properties, LLC, for a variance to increase the density requirements allowed 9 units, requesting 10 units at 1665 Marlin Road in Ward 1. I'll entertain a motion for approval. I have a motion by Mr. Link, seconded by Ms. Dickerson. Ms. Christie?
This property is located in the Moss Bluff area and encompasses a little over 1 acre of land. This came before our board last month for a revised site plan, but in 2014, the board approved a request to rezone the property to multifamily for duplexes. The applicant is now requesting a variance to increase the density requirements to construct 2 additional single units from the allowed 8 units to a total of 10 units. Because the proposed density is consistent with the character of the area, the staff recommends the request be granted.
Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's recommendations? We have no blue cards in opposition or no opposition. Any questions or concerns by the board? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda item number 7. I'd like to announce that case VAR 1019-0112, a request by Cade Cryer for a variance to allow 2 lots with less than required lot square footage, required 43,560 square feet, each lot requesting 20,000 square feet each, at 3137 Topsy Road in Ward 1 has been withdrawn. Agenda item number 8. Take appropriate action on VAR 1119-0115, a request by Sealy Ratcliffe, Swisco Road LLC, for a variance to decrease the required number of parking spaces, required 147 spaces, requesting 125 spaces at 2580 Calcasieu Industrial Drive in Ward 4. We do have 1 blue card on this in favor of, and we'll get to that shortly. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions. I have a motion by Ms. Galicia and seconded by Coach Williams. Ms. Christie? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Ms. Tammy?
That's okay. This property is located in the Sulphur area, and the applicant is requesting to decrease the number of parking spaces for the proposed Wood Spring Suites Hotel. With the total number of rooms, the applicant is required to have 147 parking spaces, and they are requesting 125. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file with the Division of Planning and Development, provided that the director or designee may authorize adjustments to the site plan in light of technical or engineering considerations discovered during development, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward toward the development or structures to minimize intrusion onto surrounding properties, that the development adhere to stormwater best management practices, and that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering.
Thank you, Ms. Tammy. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's recommendations? We have 1 blue card in favor. Andrew Bancher? Okay, Bancheri. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments by the board? I'm sorry, Mr. Bancher, you had...
Good evening, Andrew Vancheri, 1424 Ryan Street in Lake Charles. Work on behalf of the owner and just here to ensure that any of your questions are answered. Our hotel developer is here as well in the event you have any questions you need answered. Thank you.
Questions or comments by the board? No blue cards and no opposition. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Agenda item number 9. Take appropriate action on EX 10190061, a request by Krause and Mannigan Lumber Company, LLC, for an exception to allow a revised site plan and to allow a 10-year extension to an existing solid waste landfill at 1360 North Beglis Parkway in Ward 4. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions. I have a motion by Ms. Dickerson, seconded by Ms. Hyatt. Ms. Tammy?
Property is located in the North Sulphur area and encompasses 160 acres of agricultural zone land. In 2009, the applicant received approval to allow a construction and demolition debris landfill. The approval was granted with a stipulation for a 10-year period following permit issuance. At this time, the extension would be needed for the applicant to continue the operation and renewal of the construction and debris landfill. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file with the Division of Planning and Development, provided that the director or designee may authorize adjustments to the site plan in light of technical or engineering considerations discovered during development. And upon issuance of a development permit, the solid waste disposal site is for 10 years or when the landfill is completely filled, whichever comes first.
The applicant have anything to add to the staff's recommendations? We have no opposition. Any comments or questions by the board? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda item number 10. Take appropriate action on EX 10190063, a request by Scott M. Mosby for an exception to allow residential development, a manufactured home on each lot in the 3300 block of Cedar Street in Ward 3. We do have 3 blue cards in opposition to this, and we'll get to that shortly. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions. Have a motion by Ms. Galicius, seconded by Mr. Link. Ms. Tammy?
This property is located in the North Lake Charles area, and the 2 lots encompass .33 acres each of single-family residential zone land. Currently, the property is vacant, and at this time, the applicant is requesting to allow a manufactured home on each single-family residential lot. Because the proposed development is not consistent with the character of the area, the staff recommends the request be denied. Should the board grant the request, the staff recommends the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file with the Division of Planning and Development, provided that the director or designee may authorize adjustments to the site plan in light of technical or engineering considerations discovered during the development, and that the manufactured homes must be skirted prior to utilities being connected.
Thank you, Ms. Tammy. And we have 2 blue cards against, and one of the blue cards is for. I stated 3 against a while ago. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's recommendations? Oh, you're Mr. Darrell Crochet? Yes. If you would come up and address the mic and state your name and address, please, sir.
Chairman, as the speaker comes up, Mr. Crochet, is he here representing the applicant?
Are you here representing the applicant?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Darrell Crochet from 40 Mulberry and Sulphur. The applicant is out of town. He's a businessman, and he's in Hammond, Louisiana tonight doing some business. And he asked me to come represent him. And this is 3 big lots. I mean, it's, as you can see, and, I just don't see why, we couldn't let him put 2 trailers on there. It's kind of a win-win situation for the parish. Somebody put a trailer on there, you get more taxes. The property will be valued at more. You move somebody else in there, they're going to go to work. The parish is going to get more money out of that, taxes. I think it's kind of a win-win situation for us to allow him to do that. And, if you've been out there, the area, it wouldn't be out of place to have 2 trailers right there in that area. Yeah, I think, and when I read this thing that it was denied, I told him I would come and represent him, So I wish y'all would take under consideration, and he'll follow all of the regulations. I mean, whatever y'all tell him to do, he's gonna do it. He's a good, solid businessman and a good citizen for Calcasieu Parish.
Any questions for Mr. Crochet from any of the board members? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate Jennifer Gardner.
Jennifer Garner, 3323 Elmwood Street, Lake Charles, Louisiana. I come sort of on behalf of the neighborhood. I have a petition from just about every person in our neighborhood that is opposing this recommendation. I understand that Mr. Mosby, he has kept up the house property since, I don't know what point he took over that ownership there. He has been very good about keeping that up. But I disagree with what was just said. I have spoken with Robbie Ingalls. She is a realtor here in the Lake area, and she has told me that our property, those that are in the neighborhood already, the residents that are there, our property value will greatly decrease by moving manufactured homes into our neighborhood. He is correct. If you go down Old Town Road, you will pass a few mobile homes. They are very dilapidated. They are not taken well care of. We have crime in that area quite often. If you turn down Burson Avenue, which is close to our neighborhood, there are trailers in that neighborhood. And again, we have trouble there. There are no trailers that at this point sit on property. I have 3 lots, and several of my father-in-law here, he has several lots in the neighborhood. And we don't ever plan to put trailer homes on there. It would be very beneficial to us money-wise, beneficial to the community, but not beneficial to our residents and the neighbors within there. We do have problems with rental issues already. In fact, just that Mr. Mosby's property alone, the last renters that he had, we had a big cop presence in the neighborhood because they had to physically be removed. Across from my father-in-law used to be a rental house. That rental house has now become it went up for sale. Prior to that, when it was a rental home, it was nothing but trouble. I was constantly calling the cops out, and there was a lot of problems there. But since it has become ownership and somebody has now bought the home, we have no trouble. So I think that rental property has created more crime in our neighborhood, and I just don't think that it would be very beneficial to our neighborhood. We've tried to keep the integrity as it is. I actually have our restrictions, and we have restrictions that, we don't want mobile homes in our neighborhood. And I would appreciate it if the board would help us keep up the integrity of our neighborhood by voting against this.
Thank you, ma'am.
The
Ms. Sherry?
restrictions of your neighborhood say no mobile homes?
Yes, ma'am. It says right here, I believe, I probably should have highlighted it, but it says no trailer, basement, tent, shack, garage, barn, temporary building, or other outbuildings. Let me see. I believe that was,
Okay, that's,
yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a Colin Gardner.
My name is Colin Garner. I live on 3323 Elmwood Street, and what was the other thing I needed to say?
That was it. Just your name and address.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon. My name is Colin Garner, and I'm 15 years old. I'm here today because my family and I do not want mobile homes in our neighborhood. My father served in our country in the Navy and as a Lake Charles firefighter. He passed away in 2010. He left this property as an inheritance to me and my 2 sisters. My grandfather has been here since 1973, and other members of my family have been here even longer as well. The Pine Hills subdivision has always had a restriction against mobile homes. I am concerned about this proposal and how it would affect the integrity of our neighborhood. I believe that this will also bring unnecessary dangers into our neighborhood. I do know as well that mobile homes bring the property value on our house drastically down. In the past, police have had to come to our neighborhood. Even us ourselves have had to call them for instances such as domestic disturbances in the neighborhood on other rental property. When I was young, our house was robbed, and as an 8-year-old, I had to witness that along with my other sisters. So my concern is that by allowing more rental property into our neighborhood, there will be an increase of crime. Through my observations that I myself have made, I have noticed on multiple occasions that neighborhoods with mobile homes are dirtier, have higher crime rates, and are overall less inhabitable. The trailer parks on Old Town Road are extremely dirty and have problems with squatters and drugs. One of the men who work at the gas station next to the trailer park carries a gun so that way he can feel safe at night. Again, my concern is that this will happen to our neighborhood as well. A decision that could put my family and others in a bad situation should be carefully considered. Past members of my family were the founders of the Pine Hill subdivision. In conclusion, why should the decision be made so someone can move trailers into our neighborhood, but the integrity and overall safety be compromised? That is a larger price to pay than I feel should be necessary. I politely ask the board not to rezone our neighborhood to allow mobile homes into our neighborhood. I understand that we are never totally safe, yet the decision you make today will determine how much safety we have on a regular basis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Crochet, you have any, as the representative of the applicant, you have anything else you'd like to say?
This is kind of off the cuff. I've never done this before or gone through this, and I can understand, but are the restrictions actually followed? You know, when you have restrictions, you gotta follow them. Are there no trailers in the area?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Crochet?
Okay.
Ms.
Well, hey, you know,
Sure.
you know, I was just wondering if the you know, if they're following, it seemed like there's some trailers in the area. But, like I say, you know, he bought this house, he fixed it up, and, there's no problem with the people that he put in there. I think he would put some more good people in there, you know, and like I say, he would follow the restrictions, and, hey, it's up to y'all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crochet. Any comments or questions from any of the board members? Hearing none, Ms. Christie, can we have a roll call vote, please, ma'am?
Pearson? Mr. Smith?
No.
Mr. Porsche?
No.
Mr. Williams?
Oh,
Ms. Hyatt? Ms. Galicia?
No.
And Mr. Link?
No.
7 against.
Christie, motion fails. Agenda item number 11, take appropriate action on EX 11190064, a request by Jacob Miller for an exception to allow commercial development reception facility at 7200 Dalton Bog Road in Ward 2. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Galicia and a second by Mr. Link. Ms. Tammy?
Property is located in the southeast Lake Charles area and encompasses 8.14 acres of agricultural zone land. The applicant intends to convert 9 existing silos located on the property into a reception facility. Excuse me. The reception facility will be constructed in 2 phases. Once complete, the facility will be a full wedding and events venue. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development adhere to the site plan on file with the Division of Planning and Development, provided that the director or designee may authorize adjustments to the site plan in light of technical or engineering considerations discovered during development, that all exterior lighting must be oriented inward toward the development or structures to minimize intrusions onto surrounding properties, excuse me, that screening must be provided in accordance with Section 2650 of the Parish Code of Ordinance prior to final electrical approval on that specific development, and that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering.
Thank you, Ms. Tammy. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's recommendations? Thank you. No opposition. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda item number 12, take appropriate action on EX 11190065, a request by Jeb Trahan for an exception to allow a bar pit 19.7 acres in the 3,000 block of Nicholas Bluff Road in Ward 7. I'll entertain a motion for approval with conditions. I have a motion by Mr. Galicia and a second by Ms. Hyatt. Ms. Tammy?
Property is located in the Vinton area and encompasses 53 acres of agricultural land. The applicant is requesting to allow a borrow pit of approximately 19.7 acres. The petitioner intends to bid on a road and bridge project in the future. If approved and once excavation begins, the trucks will be required to utilize an approved haul route determined by the Division of Engineering. Because minimal impacts are to be expected, the staff recommends that the request be granted with the following conditions: that the development must be in accordance with Section 26-122-1F4 of the Parish Code of Ordinances, that a road damage bond and the amount determined by the parish engineer must be submitted to the Division of Engineering prior to issuance of a development permit, that utilization of additional parish roads is subject to future bonding requirements in the event parish roads are impacted by heavy truck traffic, that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering, and that hauling is prohibited through construction zone from proposed borrow pit site east to Highway 109 south as per attached map. And you have attached map in your packet.
Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff's recommendations? No blue cards or opposition. Any questions or comments by the board? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda item number 13. Take appropriate action on RZ 10190150, request by Adley Abshire to rezone from mixed residential R2 to light industrial I1 to allow industrial development at 313 Leger Road in Ward 3. I'll entertain a motion to recommend approval with conditions. I have a motion by Ms. Galicia and seconded by Ms. Hyatt. Ms. Tammy?
Property is located in the Lake Charles area and encompasses approximately 0.94 acres of mixed residential zone land. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property to light industrial. He intends to develop, lease, or sell the property for future light industrial development. Because the proposed zoning is consistent with the character of the area, the staff recommends the request be granted with the following conditions: that unless modifications are required due to technical or engineering considerations and approved by the director, all uses and improvements must be pursuant to and in strict accordance with all applicable federal, state, and local laws, statutes, ordinances, codes, resolutions, rules, and regulations. That all exterior lighting must be oriented inward toward the development, and the light source cannot be visible to adjacent properties. That screening must be provided in accordance with Section 26-50 of the Parish Code of Ordinances prior to final electrical approval on the specific development. That the development adhere to stormwater best management practices, and that a runoff management plan will be required unless appropriate waiver is granted by the Division of Engineering.
The applicant have anything to add to the staff's recommendations? We have no opposition, no blue cards. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda item number 14. Receive a report from the staff regarding proposed amendments to Chapter 26 of the Calcasieu Parish Code of Ordinances, specifically related to community-type sewer systems. Mr. West, do you have some comment on this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. John Bruce from our Parish Engineering Department is going to be coming up before you tonight and doing a brief presentation on some ordinance changes to our community sewer ordinance in Chapter 26. We've been working on these basically back since 2017. They got put on hold because we had drainage ordinances that we got focused on and we're doing. And so this is just now coming up, although we've been looking at it and studying it for a while. I do want to say tonight that this, what he's doing tonight is just presenting this to you. We're not asking for any action on this item. This is just an introduction to this, and we're certainly willing to meet with anybody on this during the comment period, which will be open, after this meeting. And so I think there's some group of people out there tonight that are going to be speaking on this, and certainly we've been in contact with them and are willing to meet with them and discuss their concerns and see if there's any changes or compromises that we can make regarding this ordinance. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bruce, and he'll give you a brief presentation. If there's any questions after that, we'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. John Bruce, Calcasieu Parish Engineering Department. The parish adopted major changes to a subdivision ordinance back in 2012, and that was the wastewater provisions as it affects the subdivisions, adopting the community-type sewer standards. After about 5 years of implementation, the perception of planning, engineering, and public works was that there was some modifications needed to be made in the system, and that's what we're bringing to you tonight. The update began in about 2016, 2017, and went through a very deliberative process of developing. The revisions came through multiple meetings between planning, engineering, and public works to bring what we have for you tonight. I believe you've already been provided with a digest or a summary of the changes. With you having already have that, we're going to go through this pretty quickly, high level, if you will. But if you have any questions at all, I'll be more than happy to address those. When we looked at the ordinance, we looked at it with multiple perspectives in mind. There's a lot of different interests that go into the ordinance. On the graphic I have, we displayed the three major perspectives, and that's of the developer, the user, and the taxpayer. And we looked for that central zone, the sweet spot, if you will, that's common to all, where no one party was bearing the brunt of the burden of accomplishing this, nor enjoying the most of the benefits, but a balanced effect. The developer, obviously, he is the one that's probably most visible and has a direct, obvious investment in the development process, a major capital investment on it. Needs to be able to recover that investment as well as a profit to stay into business. Any of the revisions had to be looked at to make sure they were equitable with this in mind, didn't put the entire burden on the developer on these standards. The user, that's the guy paying the monthly bill for the use of the wastewater system. In a residential subdivision, that's your homeowner. He's paying the sewer user fee monthly. His interests are, number one, he wants to know that his system is reliable, that his health and safety of protection for the removal of the wastewater from his residence and adequate treating of it. And spin off of that is the protection of his investment. Any subdivision that gets a reputation of poor wastewater treatment, just like poor drainage, that's a negative on any type of resale. So he has interests that have to be protected. The general Calcasieu Parish taxpayer has interest in this, and that is a financial stewardship. They don't want to have to subsidize a development 20 years down the road with major capital expenditures that should not be required, as well as environmental off-site impacts. Anything that happens within the subdivision isn't necessarily confined to the subdivision. Environmentally can easily go off-site. So we've given attention to these three perspectives, have tried to balance it. One way we did that was issuing what we call a solicitation of views. Back in 2017, we issued a notice and a request to many interests of the proposed changes and provided advanced copies of these. These included the consultant engineering community, included the development community, included manufacturers of the wastewater treatment plants themselves, and included the umbrella organization, the Alliance for Positive Growth, were provided with these, and their views were requested. Views of that was requested. The changes that we'll briefly introduce to you tonight were in several different categories. One is a fairly general category. The other three are more specific. We'll mention more detail on that, provide more detail. The refinements in the housekeeping group, we updated some definitions, some general definitions in that category. We updated the review process, some of the information that needs to be included in the platting, and we modified some of the easement requirements. This was partially in response to input we've received over the years from development as to the depths of the installed infrastructure. And we determined that we could accommodate that if it was reflected in the easements. So that was a modification made. Specific changes that we'll go into more detail on involve the coordination between subdivisions, the transfer of infrastructure, and operational startup at the end of the project. And of these three, hands down, the one that we got the most input on and feedback on was the transfer of infrastructure. Coordination of developments is a difficult task. Our overriding objective in looking at this was we didn't want the criticism of turning a blind eye to existing development when new development is going to occur in the near vicinity. It's a difficult task because of two things. One is timing, and the other is cost. The developer that comes on the site that has his project ready to go is very reluctant, and understandably so, to delay his project any, waiting on a timeline that he cannot control. And that can't control is a negotiation with whoever the other party is. So that's been an obstacle to getting this accomplished. Another, of course, is the dollar sign. And that is an equitable determination of the cost burden and make sure that that's shared equitably. So those are two major obstacles, difficulties we have on the coordination. So what we did in the ordinance is we came up with recommended changes that if you're coming in and developing an undeveloped parcel that's indicated on the right side of that photograph, and nearby, as shown on the left side of the photograph, left side of that road, there's an existing development that does not have sewer, that we put in there some coordination of the infrastructure in the new development to anticipate future extensions into the old development. Doesn't require the developer to install any pipelines going into the prior existing subdivision. Doesn't require the upsizing of any pipelines or anything like that. It goes into the placement of the infrastructure to facilitate an efficient connection and expansion in the future, as well as depth considerations on seeing if the old subdivision can connect into there. So that's the type of coordination we have in mind and the things that we kept in front of us to make sure it wasn't overly burdensome. The mandatory transfer of wastewater systems, we got the most feedback on that item. The overriding concern on this one in presenting this recommended change to you is protection of the environment and the reliability of the system. Today, the ordinance as implemented allows two approaches. One is the transfer of the infrastructure, the wastewater, just like the roads and drainage, from the developer to the parish for public ownership and operation. It allows the retention of the sewer as to private interests, and the recommended changes go to a mandatory transfer where it would have to go to the public body. We have developers taking advantage of both systems. We have many that come in for public ownership. We have some that elect to retain the private ownership of it. The mandatory change will be limited to subdivisions of 10 lots or more. The major subdivisions will be limited to those. And of course, the characteristics of the wastewater would have to be compatible with what we can treat. The feedback that we got on this item related to two primary items. One was the cost. It was felt that the parish standards would add additional cost to the project that was not necessary. We took that information, looked at that, and what we found was that the bulk of it is true. There are specifications that we require that the developer, if they keep it in private, may not have to incur. The two major items that this included was the remote monitoring and sound attenuation. Remote monitoring is something that the parish does. Public Works can remotely monitor its wastewater plants and its lift station operations, so if there's a problem, they can find it quickly and respond to it quickly. Well, we require that. It's called a SCADA system. It's electronic with the routine continuous monitoring. The health department does not require it. Another thing is the sound attenuation. You can see where the wastewater plant is in this photograph right next to houses. A complaint that you're very prone to get is sound, noise from the plant. These things have blowers, pumps air into the treatment process, and is noisy. So we have provisions that the health department doesn't have of protection against that noise from the neighbors, and that is it. So we went back and looked at that as far as the benefit that was received from the public for some of the extra things that we do have in there in excess of the health department. Felt that they were reasonable things to include in there. The second major point that we got back on this was that some have incorporated into their business model that they're retaining the ownership and using it as a revenue generator for themselves, and that's understandable. We looked at that. We still came back and felt that the public is best served if this is turned over to the public entity for public ownership and operation. In the event of problems, they know where we are. They call you, they call their police juror, who knows who to get a hold to and have the problem taken care of quickly. So that was some of the reasons that we stayed with this on including this. There's a few things that the mandatory transfer do not include other than the subdivisions that I mentioned. One, just to be clear, we're not talking about schools. We're not talking about taking over the school's wastewater system. This is the kind of treatment plant they have. We're not talking about rental development, be it a mobile home park or an RV park. We're not talking about taking over any of those. It is conventional subdivision wastewater systems. Another feature that we provided for was in response to input we've gotten from the development community, and that is that some that own these systems would like to transfer it from private ownership to public ownership. So we felt that that was a good companion with the mandatory transfer, that we need to provide a vehicle for them to accomplish that. The three takeaways from this is, one, it is applicant control. Whoever owns that infrastructure, they've got to initiate it. They're in charge. If something they want to do, fine. We're not going to knock on their door and ask them. They initiate it. There are quality control provisions where we're not getting something of unknown quality. The owner of it has to show us what they have, say what they're going to do to bring it up to standard, and then show us that they did it. And then we have two public body firewalls involved in the process that come before a public meeting before things can proceed. So there are protections in that. The third point of additional discussion is on the tail end of the project, and that's acceptance and warranty. This is another item that was put in here from input that we received from the development community. Currently, we have what is called a 50% maintenance bond included in the ordinance. This is to provide Public Works with a source of revenue for early maintenance requirements in the project. We got feedback. Some of the smaller developers would have problem with the 50% maintenance bond. Either they couldn't get a bond. If they couldn't get a bond, they had to put up 100% escrow of the 50% value, and that was difficult. So we came up with a process that can be tailored to the stage of development of the development. It's based on the number of houses in each stage. It's 3 months worth of user fees per lot is what it boils down to. You can see from the photograph that in some instances the developer has to put in nearly 100% of the infrastructure and have a lot of the infrastructure installed compared to the number of residents. So with being able to tier the startup fee to the number of residents he's building, he has some control on his cash flow there rather than tying it to 100% of the infrastructure. Ms. Crane has already gone through the timeline for you as far as where it goes from this point. This is the introduction. We have 30 days of public comment. I believe we've already expressed an intent to enter into discussions after tonight prior to your next meeting and see what results from that. I'll be happy to. I know this was really quick, but I'll be happy to give answer to any questions that you may have at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Does any of the board members have any questions or?
Email that to us, that information?
Yes. We'd emailed y'all the summary of changes, and I
Right.
think that was, we can also email the red line copy of all of that, yes.
Sam, I do have two blue cards from a couple of gentlemen with the Alliance Positive Growth. Mr. Billy Lofton, if you would state your name and address, please, sir.
Billy Lofton, 113 Dr. Michael DeBakey Drive. Thank you. Guys, I'm with the Alliance for Positive Growth. I'm the chairman of the Sewer, the Wastewater Ordinance Committee. We're here primarily tonight to, I guess for lack of a better way to say it, to complain. My request to you guys is that all of this timeline be pushed back. The reason for this request is that we've tried very diligently to be involved in this process. In making this request to you, I'd like to go through the timeline of the involvement that we've had in an effort to respond to the original solicitation for views, which was sent by Mr. Bruce. And let me say, everyone we've dealt with has been very nice, but we've tried to make some substantive and give some substantive input to these changes, and we feel like we're not having an opportunity to have our voice heard or have an adequate response to our concerns. So I'd like to go through that timeline with you. On April 10th of 2017, this memorandum went out by Mr. Bruce soliciting views with that ordinance. A member of our organization, Mr. Minton, with Cypress Group Engineering, sent to Mr. Bruce on May 1st of 2017 a written list of our concerns as it relates to these ordinance changes. That was within 1 month, less than a month. We immediately requested a meeting with Mr. Bruce, which he generously arranged for us. That occurred on July 19th of 2017. All the members of the committee were there. There were 8 people there, plus Mr. Bruce. All of our numbers and emails were given at that date, and they're all here. I have a copy of that list. We went over that summary. Essentially, what we talked to him about was the biggest issue being the mandatory transfer to the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury of those sewer systems and the costs related to that. He indicated at that time that there had been no cost analysis done. And as far as I can see tonight, I'm not sure that a formal cost analysis has been conducted. I followed up after that committee meeting with him with a telephone conference on that same day. I'm sorry. That was on 7/19. On 9/12, I followed up with an email following up on our July 19th meeting, asking him to advise of a timeline for adoption and any revisions or comments related to our written comments. I didn't get a response, but I did follow up on 9/20, about 8 days later, asking that he please advise of the timeline for the proposed sewer ordinance revisions and any other written comments that he's received. We haven't gotten any other comments from anyone else.
And Mr. Chairman, that is 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Yes, I would ask for an additional 4 minutes, please.
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, our bylaws are the problem here. Robert's rules don't really allow the board to extend time from the bylaws. So it's a 3-minute speakers. Now, in the past, we have allowed speakers who've hit the 3-minute time limit to have additional 30 seconds or 60 seconds to kind of sum things up. But it's your call on whether to give the 30 or 60 seconds.
Jake?
I may have misunderstood what you just said.
Sure.
Or what we read at the beginning. I'm interested in hearing the comments. The board may vote to extend, or the chair could extend the time, correct?
Unfortunately, under Robert's rules, you can't extend the bylaws. If it were a rule that you have, you could, but even a 2/3 vote can't really extend the bylaws time. Now, also, and Mr. Loftus' comments are perfectly fine. However, you've already received the report, so a request to delay things from here will come back before you next month. So that might be the more appropriate time to seek additional time or delay. All tonight's agenda item was to receive the report, which has been done. So I don't know if
I don't
there's
think
really
we
a whole
will
lot.
take any action on.
There's no action being taken
anything
tonight.
on this report, except the report was received and comments received from the
Right.
public.
So my recommendation would be if Mr. Lofton can maybe have 60 seconds to kind of sum things up from here.
And I'll grant that 60 seconds, Mr. Lofton, if you would, please, sir.
Don't start till I get back on my place there, Mr. Gabb,
Tell me when to start.
when I start talking. Sent a follow-up email on 9/12, didn't get a response. Sent another email on 9/20. Did get a response. Sent an email on April 10. I can't adequately go through this. If y'all don't want to hear what I have to say, I thank you for the additional 60 seconds, but what I have to say is going to take longer than that.
Yes, sir.
I'll be back. The bottom line is we don't feel like we've had an opportunity to be heard. I've never tried this hard to be involved in the government process. I was city attorney for 20 years. When I sat in the situation that Sam Gabb's sitting in at this time, and he's doing a fine job, but I welcomed the opportunity to visit with people that had comments that wanted to be involved in the process. I've been trying since April of 2017 to be involved in this process, and we're not involved, but that, y'all do what you want to do. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lofton, I appreciate it.
And Mr. Chair, if I
Yes, sir.
could, and hopefully Mr. Lofton and John, Bruce, and anybody else in the police jury can meet between now and your next meeting, and hopefully everything can get worked out. But if not, certainly the proper time to request a delay would be at the next
At the
meeting.
next meeting. Mr. West?
I just wanted to reiterate that too. I did speak to, and Mr. Hankins is here tonight, Mr. Michael Hankins, he's the president of APG, and I did let him know today that we're certainly glad to sit down with his group and team to discuss any concern or any changes. Now, we may not agree on some of the things that they're requesting us to change, and that's fine and good, but we're certainly more than willing to sit down and have a meeting with this and discuss those changes.
Okay. Mr. Michael Hankins?
Good evening, Michael Hankins, 419 Alamo Street, Lake Charles, 70601. Just to kind of expound upon what Mr. Lofton said, we did make comments a couple of years ago and repeatedly requested input on those comments so that we could understand the parish's position on it, the staff's position, and never got any kind of rebuttal or comment back to us. It was just, hey, we're looking at these, we're looking at these. Then it was dormant for 12 months, and then 24 hours before the study committee meeting, we found out about the vote there. So we've had those comments, and I appreciate Wes offering to meet with us, and we'll continue to do that. And we will do that in January and get together and hopefully get some feedback on these comments, because there are real issues. And we are a group of developers, contractors, engineers, architects, attorneys, bankers. I mean, we're the exact people that can give good, insightful information to the parish staff to make a better ordinance. And that's all we really want to do. I mean, we all agree that there are issues with sewer systems in Calcasieu Parish. We're not standing up here saying we don't want that to happen, but for example, the mandatory donation. I mean, what you're talking about potentially in someone's business model is taking away a revenue stream, making that revenue stream that you used to have more expensive, and then paying an impact fee on top of that. I mean, it's a triple whammy, and you're talking about really increasing costs. And look, I know I personally am a developer, and we are a group of developers, and generally not too many too many people cry for us, but these are real issues, and we want them to be addressed, and we think there's a better way to skin the cat. And so we're hoping that what I would ask of you all is, we understand that a delay is not going to happen today, but I would ask you all to reserve any action on this until the finality of our conversations with the parish on these issues. And we may come back and say, look, we don't agree. And at that point, we'll come to you and say, this is why we don't agree, these are the problems, and you all have to make a decision. But I'm hoping that, we've got 2 weeks of Christmas here, and then we've got, another couple weeks to get together and hash this thing out. And I'm hoping we can get to a finality of our conversations before any action is taken. And so that's what we're asking today, and that's what we're hoping for. And I know you aren't taking any action today, but I appreciate your time. And we'll continue to work with the parish like we have on other issues in the past to get a good ordinance for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Hankins. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Bruce, for your presentation. At this time, I'd like to relinquish my chair to Mr. Wes Crane so that we can have nominations and election of a new chair for 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's interesting sitting up here at this perspective. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Art Little for being the chair this past year. I appreciate your service on this in this position. I want to thank Mr. Smith for his service as vice chair, and I want to thank the board for their service as well. We appreciate y'all's service in this position. These are important decisions that y'all have to make, and they affect the lives of this community, and we appreciate that. They're very serious. So at this time, I will accept any nominations for chair. Any I have a nomination for Mr. Smith as the chair. Got a second? Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the nomination. All right, you have a second? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair? Congratulations. You can proceed with electing the vice chair. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I'll entertain a motion for nominations for the position of vice chair. Nomination by Ms. Galicia for Julia Dickerson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Art Little. Any other nominations? Seems to be a pattern. There's 5. Motion to close. Second by Ms. Galicia. You're the vice chair.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Now, because Art, we don't take effect until.
Whoever wants to read the last 2 items.
You're at the chair.
Well, he turned it off.
Mr. 2020 Chair, since the next 2 items are simply advised items, whoever wants to read them, since you're at the chair, that may work well for you.
I'll put your name right
You're already there.
Well,
He'd already turned his
this was
computer
off.
Art, shut it down.
Agenda item 16. The next item on the agenda is to advise that the police jury took the following action on November 21st, 2019, with reference to the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board from the November 19th, 2019 meeting. Jonathan LaRocca, Highway 3059, Planning and Zoning recommended approval, police jury approved. TKM Properties, Marlin Road, Planning and Zoning recommended approval, police jury approved. Item 17, the next item on the agenda is to advise that the next regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning meeting will be held on Tuesday, January 21st, 2019, in the police jury meeting room.
Join
I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Coach Williams, second by Ms. Dickerson. All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned.